Hello, and welcome to another special presentation for the Elevate Summer Session. I'm Drew Parkhill. Thanks for being with us. These special presentations air every Tuesday, and our mission is to deliver the most timely and relevant information for exclusive participating members of the Elevate Summer Session. These shows are designed for you, so please let us know how we can best serve this community by suggesting future topics and guests that would help you now as well as into the future. You can drop me a line. I'm Drew at BrandStorytelling.tv. Happy to welcome Lou Dubois, Director of Editorial Content, Global Brand Communications at Hilton, as well as Shelly Palmer, CEO of the Palmer Group. And with that, I throw it over to you, Lou.
Great, thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you guys are today. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for putting this on to Brand Storytelling. Just a few kind of housekeeping notes as we kick off here. We'll spend a little time hearing some of Shelly's brilliant thoughts related to the topic of the seminar here. I think we'll follow that up. I'll ask a couple of questions, very fireside chat, but without a fire, to kind of follow that up. But I encourage all of you to ask questions in the chat as well as Shelly kind of goes on. It makes it more interactive and fun for all of us. Shelly really deserves or doesn't need much of an introduction. You guys can follow a lot of what he has done through his career if you check out the reference page that you use to register for the event, if you check out his LinkedIn page and his bio. But really excited to have him here. I think he'll be a great resource for the community for the summer. And so with that, I will hand over to Shelly for a bit of an overview, and then I'll come back and get some questions as we go from there.
Lou, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Hope everybody's doing well today and that everyone's safe and sound. What I want to talk about today is, what do you believe? And if you do believe certain things, what will you do tomorrow that you wouldn't do today because you believe them? So there's an awful lot going on in the world. I don't need to tell anybody here that things are different, and we don't need to rehash how it got different or why. We just have to know that it is different. I think, depending on who you ask, we've experienced somewhere between 8 and 10 years of social innovation in the last 5 months. It may be more than that. Things that we thought were absolutely sacred are no longer sacred, and things that we need to rely on, we can't rely on. So what are we going to do about it? What do we believe is going to happen? And if we do believe it, what will we do tomorrow that we wouldn't do today? And that's really where I want to spend my time with you this afternoon. So on the concept of social innovation versus regular innovation, let's just see if we can, for today's talk, give some definitions that may not be real definitions outside of this talk, but so we all understand each other. If you went to a doctor in December of last year, the doctor was looking for a copay if you had insurance, or cash if you didn't, and they wanted to see you in person. If you tried to send most doctors an email for insurance purposes, they wouldn't take that email, and they certainly didn't know anything about telehealth or even think about it. Today, you can go to any doctor, they can get their copay. You can pay it on Venmo or any one of 100 other payment platforms. They're happy to do some kind of telemedicine with you, and the insurance companies are completely okay with it. Even April 15th got moved to July 15th. Nothing is sacred about the world in which we live. So I could give you 100 more examples. I won't. You have probably 100 personal examples where things used to be one way and now they're another. Just the other day, they finally announced that Tenet would hit theaters. But why? We had Trolls World Tour hit not theaters, but actually become directly a stream. That stream brought in $50 million over its first weekend. We're going to see what happens in just a couple of weeks with Disney. There's a real opportunity for the movie business to change. And then there's also a lot of pushback because Tenet really wants Chris Nolan really wants this thing to be in a theater. And when are you going to a theater next, and what does that mean? So if we look at social innovation through the lens of we were technologically ready, at least some of us were, and we weren't technologically ready, at least some of us weren't, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. So the way you're going to think about this, or I'm going to ask you to think about it, is to develop theses or a thesis about certain areas that you care about. So access is as valuable as ownership. That's a thesis. Is it true? If I have access to something, do I need to own it anymore? Do I need to own a car if I have a ride sharing service available to me? Well, in December, the answer to that was probably not. But today, the answer to that might be, wait, I don't know if it's safe to get in a ride sharing service or a ride hailing service. Maybe I do need to own a car. And so just in that space of a few months, what everyone thought was fait accompli, access is more valuable than ownership. A thesis you can absolutely use moving forward for 2020 and beyond is in question. Sure, you might say that about music. You might say it about video. I don't need to own a DVD. There's no such thing anymore. I don't need to own a download of a song. I'm happy to stream it, but I might need to own a car. And so everything we were thinking is just slightly adjusted. Now, you may not believe that thesis, or it may not be one of your own. You may not believe access is as valuable as ownership, and you may have a different approach. But if you did used to believe that, what will you do tomorrow that you wouldn't do today? And how will you invest your time and your resources that are differently? Once we put this together, we have to extend it. We're all on Zoom right now in a Zoom webinar, and this has become a sort of normal course of business for absolutely everybody. Some people are great at it. Some people are not so great at it. Comes with it. I'd like to say Zoom does certain things for you and certain things to you. And I'm sure everyone's got their own stories about just too many hours spent looking directly into the camera. What should that experience be? How will it evolve? What kind of data can we take from it? How do we make it actionable? And if you're a marketer or if you're a creative, is there a better way than this to do what we're doing now? So much of what we've seen has been like the early days of television when everyone only understood radio. We have a lot of people talking about online education right now, but there's a giant difference between online teaching and online learning. What I've seen everywhere is a lot of online teaching where they point a camera at a teacher and the teacher does what the teacher would do in a physical classroom, basically just capturing a lesson as if you were trying to be in the room, and you can't be in the room. Online learning is not like that. If you were to do online learning appropriately, you would have the computer being interactive and responsive to the student. If the student was an audio learner, the student would learn with audio, or a video learner, or a text learner. If there was demonstrations or interactivity that helped, all of those things could be adapted to and taken advantage of by some kind of digital environment. In practice, that's not what's happening. Why? Well, let's go deep into that for a second. Why is it that schools are only willing to online teach, they're not willing to online learn? In practice, most schools are campuses and they're physical plants. And every one of those administrators and 100% of the people that support those schools, all of the stakeholders, believe in their hearts that 2022 or 2023, it's back to business as usual. I've got a lot of friends who have kids in private school. It's somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 a year to put a kid through grade school. And K through 12. And college, as you know, is anywhere between $35,000 to $65,000, depending on what college you're going to. De facto, nobody wants to pay for room and board. We get that. Are they willing to pay for education without experience? And the answer is a resounding maybe, but probably not. You can get a better online education. You can't get a college experience online. And so if they only sell experience, then they're going to have to sell that experience at a discount or just wait for it to come back. If their job is truly to educate and prepare you for the workforce or for your ability to earn a living later in life, that's a completely different conversation. One we've never had to have, ever. But as I said, and as you know, we've experienced something between 8 and 10 years of social innovation in the last 5 months. So what are we going to do tomorrow that we wouldn't do today? What thesis will you formulate that talks to you and gives you some guidance about online learning versus online education, and then expand that out and take it across the board. If you're in the media business, you've got to communicate with people. If you're in regular business, you have to meet with people. If you are in the trade show business, you have to have trade events. If you are in any business, you have to interact with human beings in a way that you didn't used to interact. So the question is, are you pointing cameras at each other and just pretending that you are surrogate in each other's face, if you will, or have you figured out a better way to communicate? Is there a better way to communicate? We've heard people talk about virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, VR, AR, XR, MR. All those tools are available. They've been available. Turns out that roughly 30% of the people in the world who put a VR headset on become nauseated within the first 15 minutes, so it's not a long-term solution for 3 out of 10 people can't use it. It's that simple. With augmented reality, until we have eyeglasses like this that basically put up a heads-up display, I'm not sure that the general population is going to accept it. People are not going to walk around like this with their phone in front of their faces all day long. It's not a good user experience. So we're close to augmented reality. There are some great augmented tools. Bose has their audio augmented reality eyeglasses, their sunglasses that are spectacular, and they take cues from audio cues from around, and they also will speak to you based on where you are. They understand with the gyroscope and the accelerometer that's in the frames of the glasses what's happening to you. Spectacular technology. A little bit shut down right now because no one's out and about, and they've had a lot of trouble developing tours and other things where you might interact with other human beings. And so you've got Google Translate. You're able to basically hold your phone up, and it's in everybody's phone right now, to any language and see that language translated with the font. So you've got both a combination of augmented reality and a little bit of AI thrown in there to help you with translate. So we've got the beginnings of these tools in our hands. What will you do tomorrow that you wouldn't do today? And how will you creatively change the world you're living in? What are your options? They're different than you think they are, because if you are trying to solve the problem we're in right now with a solution that is for right now, the obstacle that we've seen on the other side is that there are people who just don't believe. There are people who do not believe that this is something, that the state we're in has any permanence to it. And they don't see the new world opportunities that are born by the pandemic. This is the most tragic thing that has happened in my lifetime. There's no way to trivialize it. I've lost friends. Some of my friends who actually recovered from COVID will never be the same. One of my dearest friends just told me yesterday on the phone he can now walk 2.5 minutes without oxygen. He's a perfectly healthy person until April 1st. 3 weeks on a ventilator. The rest of the time in the hospital, he's in rehab now 6 weeks, and he'll never be able to work again. This disease is crazy. His office manager got the disease the same day he did, totally asymptomatic, never had a sniffle or a cough. And sadly and tragically, her mother passed away on April 25th. She never came off the ventilator. So there's no way to know how this is going to impact you as a human being. You just don't know. It's different based on viral load, on your DNA, and a bunch of data that we have no access to. We just don't have enough data to make evidence-based decisions about our own safety. But what we do know is that what's going to change is going to be habit forming. We've spent 5 months learning how to not do certain things, and human beings are amazing that way. Procter & Gamble will tell you, you brush your teeth for 21 days, you're a toothbrusher. That's what you're going to do. You comb your hair for 21 days, you're a hair comber. They know that once you do 21 days of anything, you will form a habit. It's what all brand marketers pray for. It's what they try to do. It's why they ring the church bell every Sunday. You know where the church is. They just want to remind you, come to church on Sunday. It's Sunday. Let's go. And so once you become habit formed, it's really hard for you to de-habit form somebody. It's what brand loyalty is about. It's 100% about how we take human habits and turn them into shareholder value. What's changed in the last 5 months? And in your mind, not mine, what's going to snap back? I mean snap back the minute it can. We already see people going to bars. We see people wanting to gather. Boys like girls, girls like boys like boys, girls like girls. They all want to get together. Nothing's going to stop that. So certain things are going to snap immediately back the moment they can. certain things will never go back. Is there a reason in the world I'm going to go in to see my doctor if I have a sniffle, if I can basically get him on Zoom and say, or FaceTime and say, hey, I have a sniffle. I'm going to go across town. I'm going to go across the country to a meeting when everybody now at their desk can press a button and see me. And for 99% of the meetings I need to take, that's going to be enough. What does that do to the airline? What does that do to the hotel? That's the easy one. What does it do to the guy with the pretzel route who services the snack stand in the airport that I hit every time? What does it do to the gas station that fills that truck? That's the kind of scenario planning and or ripple effect you need to be thinking about right now. This isn't a technological scenario. This is just you. Imagine what you're spending 10% less, whatever that means to you. You're buying 10% less stuff. Everybody is. Some people are buying 20% less stuff. My Amex bill, because of my business travel, maybe 25% of what I spent last August will be spent this August, and it was a little less last month. That'll change. How much will it change? And if it does change, what will that mean to our future? I want to talk a little bit about the title of this talk, which is Lies Marketers Have Told Me. One of the big lies that we've been told is that data that we gathered was going to be used in ways we did not understand. Well, it turns out that's true. Data is used in ways we don't understand. But all of us who are not the data elite, if you're not Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix, if you're not a data elite organization, 100% of the profiles that you have accumulated in the last 6 years are valueless right now. Because the fact that I'm spending 25% of what I used to spend and everybody's spending at least 10% less across the board means that if you were over-indexing 175% on BMWs in November of 2019, in August of 2020, if you don't have a job or if you are imperiled or if you're scared about 2021, which you might be, you definitely don't over-index against a BMW. So multiply that across the entire data set of the 900 million people that an Axiom has propensities for in their database. If you don't have a way to readjust quickly your data set, you are absolutely in a place the data elite want you. You cannot actually function the way you thought you could as a marketer just 6 months ago. So we need to collect all new data. We have to cluster and classify in ways we've never clustered and classified before. We have tools to do that we've never had before. That is absolutely true. But we also have a population that has dramatically shifted in ways that are not easily predictable and not easily understandable. The best way I had it described to me was a friend of mine who's a CPG marketer, a consumer packages marketer, said, if you go into a supermarket and there's 2 rolls of toilet paper left, do you actually care what brand they are? And the answer is you don't. And so if you can afford them, you're going to buy them. And so brand marketing, as we understand it, is shifting to a place where a promise of stock, in and out of stock, surpasses a brand promise, and true quality and value surpass all other. So we haven't been there in a while. We've been in a marketing world, a very market-driven world where things, oh, this is brand X and it's fantastic because LeBron uses it. Now, I need a pair of sneakers that are going to be durable enough so I don't have to buy another pair because the $80 or $100 they're going to cost me may be $100 I need for something else. That's the first time in our consumptive society in the West that we've been in this situation. Not that there haven't been haves and have-nots, there have been. I'm not trying to even slightly say that people are rich or have always had money. But what I am saying is that the people who have had money that we look at as the meat of the demographic, where I'm going to bring out a new $1,500 shiny object and I have a market for it, that group is not in the same position it was 6 months ago and is unlikely to be for a while. And so I'll leave you with this thought. If you're thinking about my new 5G, fill in the blank, my new AR, VR, fill in the blank, if you're thinking about new technology as some kind of cool factor that's going to fix everything, think again. We're in a world where value trumps everything. It's got to have value. Utility is on the top of people's lists. And communication needs to be brilliant, because the noise factor is out of control. And today, from my position, more than any other attribute, it doesn't matter what other thing you're talking about, thing one for every brand that we deal with is trust, because it's the thing people have the least of and value the most right now. Do I trust this information? Do I trust this brand? Do I trust this product? Because there's so much you can't trust. The things you can trust are the things that you hold most dear. And we have seen this tested and tested time and time again over the last 4 to 6 months. It's been a spectacular lesson in back to basics. So today I'm going to ask you, not what I said, but what do you believe? And what are the theses that you can come up with that, I gave you one, access is as valuable as ownership. Data is more powerful than the presence of other data. Anything that can be hacked will be hacked. Pick a few. Decide if you truly believe them now. And then what will you do tomorrow that you wouldn't have done today because you do believe them? And with that, I'll take your questions.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Shelly. I think that we could go so many directions following some of that. I think a reminder for anyone on the chat to drop your questions in, and I'll get to them in a minute. A couple things that I sort of thought through as I was listening to you and some of the questions. I think we started this conversation when we had the idea for the panel, really to talk about the future of storytelling, and particularly as it pertains to technology, to your point. I think the last point you made there around access and utility and some of the really important things that we have seen to be real during this time will change the way that we do that from a storytelling perspective. I guess I'd love to hear from you, bringing it to the habit side, right? Because you mentioned how habits have changed. What sticks out to you in the way consumption of media and consumption of a lot of the content that we see out there today, because it's changed the way we all interact, right, in the last 6 months. What has surprised you most, and maybe what sticks around from this period on the habit front?
What I am really fascinated by, and not surprised by, just fascinated by, is the way that we've used up the internet. There's so much content. There were 560 broadcast quality shows in production last year, up from 400 and change the year before, up from 250 the year before. We were in the platinum age of television production. TV, the art form, not the platform, just the art form of video. And the story arcs had changed dramatically. The craft of the business had changed. We'd gone from episodic television that was procedural, where you had an opening act and then 3 acts, or a prologue, 3 acts and an epilogue, to Game of Thrones, where, if you didn't catch it from the beginning, you needed a spreadsheet to go back and figure it out. My favorite version of that is Dark, the show on Netflix. By the time you're in the middle of the season, you have to start from the beginning. It's absolutely required, because it's basically a 30-hour movie that just has a beginning, middle, and ending, rising action, climax, and falling action that goes over 30 hours. And on the other side of that, you've got TikTok that in somewhere between 15 and 60 seconds will tell an entire story in the spirit of Vine, may it rest in peace, the 6-second Twitter wonder from years ago. We've gotten to a place now where people are making their own fun, and they're making it brilliantly. And so when you look at TikTok, you look at Reels, you look at Snap, you look at the places people, Instagram, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, or IGTV. These are places where people are making amazing content that used to be very seriously dismissed by Hollywood, and is no longer dismissed by Hollywood, because Hollywood's paralyzed. It can't do what it does at the level it likes to do. It just doesn't know how to make movies in the time of COVID. And so we're running out of movies right now. There are none in production for next year. And so this is going to be an interesting time where people are going to, A, make their own fun, and B, authenticity in that own fun is going to be very, very well rewarded. And so that fascinates me. President Trump's banning of TikTok notwithstanding, I don't think it's going to get banned. I think it'll work itself out. Whether it becomes a Microsoft property or they win in court, TikTok, I don't think is going anywhere. But what's important about TikTok, and it's only like 1 ad a day on TikTok, so it's not really an advertising platform, but it is an amazing platform for advertisers. And what I mean by that, there are people on TikTok who do woodworking demonstrations or do what's the most important thing a startup should know, or like accounting tips. I mean, it's a wealth of crazy. We have a lot of data about these people, and we have a lot of contact with these people. You might call them influencers. Some of them are, some of them aren't. They're all business people. And they're all creating cottage industries, and they're all able to create value for themselves and also drive product sales. Not at the mass level that you would see in a television commercial for a consumer packaged good or a fast food hamburger restaurant that might be in a primetime show or even in a daytime show, but in a tight, concise, community building way. It's a giant shift in storytelling. It's a giant shift in the way that you build a trusted community. Probably the best example of it, Lou, is on Twitch, where you can't game it. Like, people don't understand Twitch. They don't like, it's television online. You need to build an audience. It takes time. They need to trust you. And some of the best gamers who don't play esports on Twitch, they practice on Twitch, 2, 3, 400,000 loyal followers on a regular basis. You would, that's the size of a daytime television show. In fact, it's the size of most cable television shows in prime time. So think about that for a minute. You got a human being who's playing a video game, who's live tweeting, who's built this community around them with 400,000 people. And any given night, you'll go there, there's 250,000 people watching this person play video, or these couple people, or someone's shouting out what's happening. And there's a bunch of interesting multimedia things happening. It's interactive. It's directly clickable. You can't game it. It was built up over trust. How does the television industry even try to compete with that?
Yeah.
Those are the things that are really getting foothold now in the age of COVID, when there's just no new content on TV, and TV's got laying on its back with its belly exposed.
It's a really good point, and I know you went the platform route there, which I was going to follow up with, but you kind of already covered it. I think it's created this medium between, you know, what we've now seen Disney doing with releasing a movie for $30 at home, right? To the TikToks and Reels and Twitches of the world, which, to your point, are built on authenticity and sort of the quickness of those platforms. What does that mean? And I know there's a question in here actually too from one of the audience members, but I'd be curious to hear from you. What does that mean for the future of long form cinema, right? Are movie theaters a thing that are going to survive this?
I keep asking myself, did movie theaters have a right to exist in 2020 anyway? Chris Nolan says yes. He wants Tenet in a movie theater. He is a director of movies. That's what a big screen. I am a consumer of movies, and I'll tell you the truth, it's the worst experience in the world. And yeah, there's probably some value in going to a big theater and seeing a Star Wars premiere, although not the last 6 of them. I went, but it wasn't like that much fun to be in that room. Do the movie theaters have a right to exist? Look, Danny Meyer, when asked about COVID in restaurants, said restaurants weren't that good of a business, and he wasn't sure the business model was a good business model before the pandemic. It's just a hard business, right? The movie business is a hard business. I kept asking all of my friends, where are the 10,000 festival films that we never get to see, that win all these awards? Like, I would love to see them. And the answer is they're not that good. Some are, but they're not like you. It's niche stuff you'd have to really love. It's not like anyone's holding out on you. Like, you didn't see the movies. I don't know that the movie theater business was a good business before, and I'm sure it's not a good business now. And I have to say, when I think about what's going to be, I don't know what an acceptable level of risk is, and I don't have enough data to make an evidence-based decision, when I would feel comfortable sitting next to a stranger and in an enclosed space. I don't know when that day is going to come. I don't want to go wear a mask in a movie theater. I don't want to sit 5 seats away from somebody. I don't need I have a big screen TV. Is it exactly the same? No. Do I miss that? Personally, not enough to and by the way, you know the stats, and if people listening don't, How many movies does an average American go to see in a theater every year? Raise your hands if you know. I can't see you. It's two. That's a maximum number for that's the top of the average. It's two.
Yeah.
So that'll keep the movie industry in business. God bless them. But I have a feeling that, you know, content is yearning to be distributed. People are interested in seeing this stuff. The the AMC Universal deal, which just got made a week or so ago,
Mm-hmm.
I think they closed the window down to 17 days.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to cross 2 weekends, but it's 17 days. That's unbelievable. If I grew up in the television and movie business, I've been in this business, I like to say I've been in television since it was radio. I've been in this business a long time. I'm way older than I look, and I can tell you in a million years that was not going to happen. That was not going to happen. And here it is. So I don't know that the theatrical release business is going to be the same. I'm not sure AMC is going to hold it together. Those are real estate businesses. And in so many cases, the federal government or the local government is saying, you can't fill up the space. I think it's 1,500 people a week need to see a movie. And if it falls below the 1,500 level, they can switch the movie out. That's where the break even is. And anything above 1,500, they're really making money. How are you putting 1,500 people in a physical box now? And you still got to pay the rent. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be great for the theatrical motion picture exhibitors, if you will.
It's a great point, and I think to jump off of that a little bit, right? I think that so much of the theatrical experience is that, you know, group setting, right? And kind of the reactions that you get being amongst all those other people, right? I guess to follow to that point, as we think about what this pandemic has done for virtual gatherings, right? And sort of, you know, the idea of all of those technologies that you mentioned, from AR to VR to 5G, you know, what potential, you know, is there from a virtual gathering and virtual, you know, kind of content sharing perspective that people should be looking at as a kind of coming out of this pandemic?
First, you got to ask the question in a very macro way. Why am I getting together? What was the original purpose? If I'm getting together for human contact because I want to be in the company of people who are like-minded, because I want to hang out and have a beer with my friends, because I want to meet new people, and I want the social interaction and all the things that go with it, there's nothing online that's going to take that place. So you have to start there and say, okay, if that was the reason for the gathering, stop now. Now we go the other way. If the reason for the gathering was an exchange of information, if I need you to understand something that I understand, then I know how to do this right now. And I don't need any new tools, because the job of media since the first cave painting, which they found is 45,000 years old, and it's a handprint in a cave in Spain. Whoever that artist was, he or she wanted us to feel what they were feeling. That was the only job of that cave painting. The person put these marks on the wall, and they wanted other people to know they were there and what it meant. The job of all media is to be seen, and the best media is instantly understood in a great game of I know that you know that I know that you know. And when you get that right or close, then it's a hit. And when you're here, it's a flop. And in fact, the dial doesn't have to be that far off. Like, this is really a flop. This could be a flop. Anywhere in here could be a massive hit. There's no science behind that. If data drove that kind of situation, everything on Netflix would be a hit. Every single thing. They have all the data they'd ever need about everything you've ever watched or will ever watch. Why isn't everything on Netflix a smash hit? And the answer is that there's a magic in creativity. Human beings have magical qualities, and every once in a while you discover something. You didn't write it, you didn't compose it, you didn't paint it, you discovered it, and everyone knows it, including you. And when that happens, people start paying. So if you want to think about like how I'm going to virtualize my trade show or my theatrical event, stop. That's like saying I'm going to invent a bottle, as opposed to saying, I need to carry this liquid from here to there. What's the best way to do it? What are you trying to accomplish? If you need to get something in your mind into my mind, or if you got this, get something in your mind into the audience's mind, and you want it to stick, the first thing is true is always true. Know your audience. The second thing is true is always true. Know what it is you want to say. Right? I know my audience. I know what I'm trying to say. And now get creative. If that means AR and VR, cool. Not because it's there, because you need it to tell the story. You have a beginning, a middle, an ending. You got a rising action, a climax, and a falling action. You can play with those all you want. The more you play with them, the more creative and more crafty you are. As long as you don't lose your audience, you're good. But I started my career as a composer producer. You go to shellypalmer.com, you can see the musical part of my career. I grew up my parents were music educators. They owned music stores. I grew up in a very musical household, and I was what people describe, not me, but I'm described as a child prodigy musician. I was a professional composer at age 4.5 and working as a musician at age 12. And I can tell you, from someone who has 5,000 pieces of music on television tonight around the world, who has won, and I won ASCAP's 12th and 13th annual Film and TV Awards, and that's an award for the most performed themes on TV. It's not a quality award, it's a quantity award. I'm prolific advertising composer as my first career. I have to tell you, you don't solve a creative problem with technology. You solve a creative problem by understanding what you need to say and who you need to say it to. That will never change. If you can use some amazing graphic, that's great. If you can use some incredible piece of music, that's awesome. But mostly what you have to count on is your ability to tell a story. Your ability, not the technology's ability. Technology is fleeting. You can build a Death Star, but someone's going to build a better Death Star tomorrow. So if you're relying, I'll tell you one quick story. I got a call 25 years ago from a guy, really, really rich venture capitalist. He says, Shelly, I've got the greatest idea ever, and you've got to come and hear it. So that night I go to the bar. He says, are you ready? I'm like, yeah. He goes, cookbooks on DVDs. I'm like, what? Which cookbook? He goes, no. Cookbooks on DVDs. I was like, which cookbook? So no, Shelly, you totally don't get it. You're an idiot. Let me tell you what I mean. Look, you get these little DVD players, you put them in the kitchen, and people can have like any cookbook on DVDs. I started to laugh out loud. Like I couldn't control myself. He goes, what are you laughing at? That's a great idea. This is the dumbest thing I ever heard. I said, what happens when they make VVDs or XVDs or QVDs or no VDs? Like, are you kidding me? That's a technology, man. That's not, who is it? Martha Stewart? Is it Joy of Cooking? Like, what is it that's going to make me buy this piece of content? Forget about how you deliver it, because tomorrow you're going to deliver it a different way. And he was like, no, that's not true. I'm like, yeah, it's true. He invested about $20 million in his cookbooks on DVD business, and of course lost it all. Complain, terrible story. But point is the point. Which cookbook? What are you saying? Don't tell me how I'm distributing it. Don't care about 5G. Don't care about AR. Don't care about VR. Don't get caught up in that. I make movies. No, you don't. You tell stories, and you happen to use movies. You happen to use the movie format to tell the story. But if the vertical video format was a better format and you didn't use it, you're an idiot. Sorry. That's my rant on like, I'm a technologist who hates technology. You use the tool, that's right. You don't use a Phillips screwdriver to drive in a flat blade screw. And you don't say, well, gee, I have to use flat blade screwdrivers because they're brand new and cool. Yeah, no, they're not.
It's a great analogy, and I know we're short on time. I've got one more question I think I'm going to ask. If there's another one we want to squeeze in from the audience here, I'm happy to do it. As a follow to that, I think to your point, like, what is the story you're trying to tell, right? And I think that is something that's resonated through this session. I know this is the one that we've talked about. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on, so we'll try to keep it sort of short for you. Particularly as I think about the audience here, you've got a lot of folks from brands, myself included. You've got a lot of production companies and partners and agencies. How does the future, and I'm not talking about the current pandemic, right? I think if we look past this current phase, how does that relationship change between the creators, the production companies, and the agencies that they might work with, and the brands that, I think we've seen changing over time, but I think will accelerate even further coming out of this?
So anybody who hides behind technology, like the craft of writing, the craft of doing art, the craft of the working work. Oh, I'm going to do 500 versions of this piece of art for you. You're all dead, right? And creators in general, generative adversarial networks are better co-creators than anything we've ever seen. GPT-3, if you haven't got an invite to play with it, you need to write a sentence. This thing is writing a book for you off the sentence in your style. It's unbelievable. The amount of copywriting, the amount of automation, what we need to do as creatives and what we need to do as producers, as production companies, as ad agencies, is create value in the value chain, like be valuable. And how do you do that? There's more to know than you can ever know. So you need to go super deep on either the data side of the story or the creative side of the story. It's never been more important to be able to be human and connected to the zeitgeist of the audience. The computer can tell you, the data can tell you who the audience is and cluster them and classify them as birds of a feather. If you are not willing to understand that as a creative and then speak to that audience, you're not going to have a value. So all the things we used to rely on because we were the gatekeepers of the fill in the blank, the art department, the music department, the video department, the film department, name the department of departments that we were in charge of. So much of that, the cognitive, non-repetitive work you believe that only humans can do, get it out of your head. Because 99% of the work that I did as a composer was done by algorithm in my head. I have a 60-second piece of music. It needs to be a 30 and a 15, and I need a 7.5 also. Then I need a 23 plus 7, and I need another donut, then a 30. That's all done formulaic. Like, there are rules. I'm going to do this in the style of fill in the blank. Oh, this has to sound like Miles Davis. There are real rules that a composer would, I'm going to make this sound like Miles Davis. It's not going to sound like Shelly Palmer. That was the thing I was most expert in, being able to knock off Randy Newman for a thing. That's an algorithm. I could pretend it's creativity. It's not. What was creative was saying, you know what? We need to sound like Randy Newman here. Wait a minute. Who thought that up? That's the magic of the agency. That's the magic of the creatives. That's the magic of the producers. And if you lose that because you think you're going to have to battle tech, make tech your friend. Understand what generative adversarial networks can do for you, what assistive technology can do for you, and then increase your efficiency. You want to kick ass and take names? Be able to do this 50 times better than the people that have 50 people doing it. So someone who's all old school has got 50 people in the art department and you have 3. Your costs are de facto a fraction of theirs, and your output will be better because you're using new tools. And so going deep into what you can do in an assistive or in a AI coworker kind of way, or a machine or an automation automated environment, that's going to be gold right now. A small group of people fighting hugely above their weight. And that's going to shift, because what you used to have, where you had an army of people that could go in and say, well, we've got an army of people. It's like, I'm sorry, I've got 4 computers and 3 guys that are data scientists, and we're going to kick your ass. And that's what's going to happen. A smaller, tighter, lighter, easier group to manage is going to come in and just beat you to death. Basically because you're too big, too lumbering, and too non-technical to understand what's happening now. So get deep in your tech. Little shameless plug, if you're freaked about that, go online. We give a class every Wednesday that's free in digital skills training. We're not the only ones. They're all over the place. Do yourself a favor. Get deep into what's new, what's next, and what it means, and then learn some skills that are out of your comfort zone. If you hated linear algebra as a kid, I'm sorry. It's time. You just gotta do it. And you take your medicine. And you don't need to become a coder. You don't need to be a fluent coder. You need to be a literate hirer of people who engineer. I don't need to know React.js. I need to know I need React to do that. I don't need to know Vue. I need to know that I'm going to use Vue over. And in fact, I may not even make that decision. I may need to just know I need a person who will understand exactly which one of these frameworks the JavaScript I'm doing should be written in. And just that alone will make you more powerful than the other people around you. And if you don't do that, you have only yourself to blame, because small groups of very motivated people, and they are very motivated now, are going to do what they have to do to win. So if you want to win, be motivated.
Do we have time for one more, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
I want to get this one in because I think it's a great question from Michelle in the audience. So Shelly, I'm going to going to read this from Michelle. I think it's an issue that we all as creators should be conscious of. But given that most executives posted a statement about Black Lives Matter in early June, it's now been over 2 months. What role do companies have in changing the narrative towards a more inclusive, anti-racist, and multicultural society in the content that we create?
So I will speak personally. I believe you change the world one human being at a time. And your responsibility is to reflect the culture that you serve. Your responsibility to your business is to be as accretive to your shareholders as possible. And so the philosophy that we have here is we try to build every single process and program in the most inclusive, most diverse way, selfishly, not because we're altruistic, because every time I have ever built a team that has young people and old people, black people and white people, females and males, gender neutral, when you put together an astoundingly diverse point of view, you're going to get amazing output, winning output every time. Whenever you're in an echo chamber and you're talking to yourself, you want to really screw up your life, become a focus group of one. Your worldview, your thing. Oh, I don't use this product. Are you an idiot? Like, we're not in that world. We're in a world with other people. So the more worldly, the more global you are, the more educated you are, the better off you're going to be. This has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. This has to do literally with being a citizen of the world. And so our position has always been that at the Palmer Group. We practiced it from the beginning of our business. I was very lucky. I grew up in the music business. There aren't races or creeds or colors in the music business. There are genres of music and people who can play them. And you're in awe. You are lit. If you're me, growing up where I grew up, when I heard John Coltrane play, I didn't know what to do with myself. I literally didn't know what to do with myself. If you asked me if he was black or white, I wouldn't have been able to tell you about it, but I would have been able to tell you about chromatic harmony and bebop scales, and I would have been able to tell you. So I was very lucky. My parents were musicians, and I grew up in a world that was completely egalitarian when it came to who you were. And I know meritocracy is a bad word, but a complete meritocracy based on what you could do. Because when someone put a piece of music in front of you, either you could play or you couldn't. And when someone said E flat and pointed, either you were there or you weren't. So that was the meritocracy part. That was, again, I consider myself blessed and lucky to have grown up with such incredibly liberal parents, with such an incredible worldview, and also in an industry that is so immensely warm and inclusive of others. I know a lot of people didn't grow up that way. And so as a corporate leader, one person at a time, lead by example. It's always worked. It will always work. Don't talk it. Just do it. And the one last little part I'll put in there, many of my black friends have asked their white friends and vice versa for advice. A lot of people, when George Floyd was murdered, had an unbelievable day, and the writings that it was heartfelt, and it was painful, and it was raw, and it's still raw. You have to know who you are to everybody else. And the best thing you can do, this is just me talking personally, and it's more like I would tell my kids or my grandkids, shut up and listen. And then offer to help and try to understand. And as a corporation, you can do that. And as a business leader, you can do that. And as a group leader, you can do that. But more than anything, as a person, you can do that. These are very troubling times. And they're troubling for a lot of reasons. I'm not guilty of owning a slave in my life. So when someone comes to me and goes, you did this, it's like, they don't mean me. They mean the world that we live in. And I have a choice. I can get defensive about it, or I could say, okay, how can I help? Or what do you think we should do? Or what's the best approach? And just listen, because while you're talking, you can't learn. And in the world in which we live in, there's a lot of noise. A lot of people are howling at the moon. A lot of people tweeting stuff, people saying stuff they would never say to you in person. Every once in a while, it's a great idea. I just sit back Try to understand where everybody's coming from, because generally people aren't evil. Generally they're put in evil situations, and so they're forced to act that way. My own take.
Shelly, it's a great point, and it's been a pleasure to speak and to listen to you through this period. I think it's really a lot of great advice for the group, and I can't thank you enough for your time, for all the questions that were submitted as well. Thank you all, and to the brand storytelling community, as I said before, thanks for hosting these sort of sessions. So with that, I'll hand back over to Andrew.
Thanks, Lou, and thank you, Shelly, for a lot of these extraordinary thought starters. I think this is a lot of really valuable information. So thank you for those insights, and thanks, Lou, for driving this conversation. If you're just joining us, or if you missed a part of this stream and you're part of the Elevate Summer Session, check the mobile app in the video archive where you can check out this video tomorrow. I encourage you to share it with other members of the group that missed this live stream. Check in with us next Tuesday. Thanks so much, all. Appreciate it.